Have you ever walked into a room and felt the weight of someone's presence? Not because they spoke the loudest, but because they didn't flinch when others did. In a world where tempers explode at the slightest spark, and people fold at the first sign of struggle, the rarest strength is the kind that doesn't shout. It's the kind that sits steady in the storm, calm while others unravel, patient when everyone else is desperate to act. I've seen how fragile we can become when we tie our peace to the chaos around us. A cutting word, a broken plan, a single setback, and suddenly we're thrown off balance. But there's another way. The Stoics knew it well. They understood that the greatest power is not in controlling the world but in mastering yourself. When you learn to meet fire with stillness, to hold the line when everything pushes you to break, you become untouchable. So stay with me, because what follows isn't about noise or bravado. It's about building a mind so steady, so strong that others can feel it without you saying a word. As we step into the first chapter, picture this, a battlefield not of soldiers and steel, but of the mind. Around you, people panic at the first crack in their plans, their voices rising, their tempers snapping like dry twigs. Yet in the center stands someone different. Calm, still, unmoved. That kind of presence unsettles people more than anger ever could. Do you want a mind so strong it makes others pause? Then don't begin by piling on more armor. Begin by dropping the illusion that life was ever meant to be easy. Here's the truth that cuts deeper than comfort. Suffering doesn't come from what happens to you. It comes from the thought that it shouldn't have happened. A lost job, a betrayal, a closed door. These sting not because the world is cruel, but because you believed the world owed you something better. Seneca warned us that, we suffer more in imagination than in reality. What he meant was this, it's the story we tell ourselves that breaks us, not the event itself. Think back. How many times have you whispered, "Why me?" as if life had signed a contract to keep you safe? We grow up on subtle promises that effort equals reward, that doing good means things will go well. But Stoicism doesn't flatter us. It doesn't tell us life will be fair. It tells us life simply is, neither cruel nor kind. The shift begins the moment you stop asking the world to change and start asking yourself to become stronger for whatever comes. That's the mind shift that changes everything. Look at the strongest people you've ever known. They're not the ones who always win. They're the ones who don't break when they lose. They don't flail. They don't lash out. They pause. They breathe. And in that pause lies their power. That's the razor edge that separates the resilient from the fragile. A strong mind is not crafted in moments of applause, but in silence under pressure, when the weight of collapse presses down, and you take one more step. Viktor Frankl, in the depths of a camp that could only be described as hell on earth, discovered this truth. Stripped of freedom, stripped of dignity, stripped of everything except one thing, the freedom to choose his response. He realized no guard, no fence, no brutality could take that away. That single discovery became one of the greatest insights of the 20th century. It shifted the center of control from the outside world back into his own hands. He did not escape suffering. He transformed it, and he lived not just in body but in meaning. This is where Stoicism speaks to us across centuries. Most people treat hardship as punishment. A Stoic sees it as a test designed by the universe for the evolution of the mind. Imagine your mind as a blade. Left untouched, it remains dull, a lump of metal. Only through friction, fire, and hammering does it sharpen. There are no exceptions. Have you noticed that those who collapse into outbursts over small inconveniences are often the ones who face the least real hardship? Meanwhile, the ones who have walked through fire tend to move with a steady calm. They've been forged. But here's the good news. You don't have to wait for tragedy to teach you. You can begin your training today in the small choices, in the daily awareness of your reactions. Ask yourself, does this moment really matter? Can I see it differently? If I follow my emotions down this road, what will it cost me? These aren't idle questions. They are weapons, sharp as any sword. And every time you wield them, you cut through weakness. Now comes the hard thing. Stop thinking failure is wrong. Failure is resistance. The first weight your mind must press against to grow strength. You cannot learn patience when the world delivers on time. You cannot build conviction without opposition. You cannot discover your inner steel if you've never stood alone in silence. Remember Marcus Aurelius's words, the impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. Your setbacks are not walls. They are training grounds. A resilient person doesn't need to shout that they are fine. They are fine. They don't flex. They don't compete. They don't scramble to dominate. They've already won the only battle that matters, the one within. And that quiet victory, that unshakable steadiness, unsettles others not because it is aggressive, but because it reveals the fragility in them. So practice this shift now. The next time hardship comes, and it will, replace the question, why is this happening to me, with, what is this here to teach me? That one change in language stops the spiral. It drags you out of the fog and plants you back in the present, the only place where you hold real power. When you change how you see the storm, you change your experience of it. Not because the storm fades, but because you've grown taller in its shadow. A strong mind does not need armor. It does not hunger for validation. It does not scheme to intimidate. Its calmness alone makes others hesitate. Because how do you fight someone who no longer needs to win? That is an untouchable strength. The kind that can't be handed to you. The kind that isn't borrowed from applause or achievement. It is born in the furnace of your own will. And here's where the path turns. Because mindset alone isn't enough. You can't hold this fortress if you keep allowing tiny cracks to weaken the walls. There are habits, small and quiet, that look harmless but erode you from within. If you want to build a mind that truly stands firm, you must first break free from the habits that keep it soft. From here, we step into the next chapter where the real dismantling begins. Chapter 2, The Real Dismantling, Breaking the Habits of Weakness. Moving into the second chapter, imagine yourself standing at the edge of your own life, staring at a wall that never seems to move. You push, you plan, you fight, and still you whisper the same question, why am I stuck in the same place? The easy answer is to blame circumstance. To say you lack opportunity, to sigh that luck never favors you. But the truth, the brutal truth, is often simpler. It is not potential you lack. It is the habits you refuse to see. Habits that seem harmless but quietly shackle your mind. Habits that feel comforting but keep you small. A strong mind is never built on fleeting ideals or grand declarations. It is forged by clearing away the clutter that weakens you. Just as a sculptor reveals the statue not by adding but by cutting away, so must you remove what corrodes your strength. And the first piece to cut is the sweetest poison of all, complaining. Complaining is a drug. It soothes in the moment, but it enslaves you over time. Every sigh about traffic, every muttered curse about weather, every long rant about coworkers whispers to your mind, you are powerless. And the more you repeat it, the more you believe it. That is how complaining builds a prison. The walls are invisible, but they are made of your own words. Think back. Have you ever met a person who is calm, steady, solution-focused, and yet complains endlessly? You haven't, because complaint and composure cannot coexist. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself daily, you have power over your mind, not outside events. The Stoic knows that if you can act, act, and if you cannot, release it. Everything else is wasted energy. So the next time you feel complaint rise like smoke in your chest, stop. Ask yourself, what can I do right now to change this? If the answer is nothing, then exhale, release it, and move on. That is not passivity. That is reclaiming energy for the battles that matter. From here, another trap emerges, comfort. Comfort is subtle. It hides behind soft chairs, warm blankets, easy choices. It whispers, stay here. Don't stretch. Don't strain. But comfort is where growth dies. Every time you skip the workout because you're tired, every time you avoid the hard conversation because you don't want tension, every time you delay a decision because you fear the outcome, you send yourself one clear message: today I choose not to grow. The Stoics practiced discomfort deliberately. Seneca slept on hard beds and wore coarse clothes, not to suffer, but to remind himself that he was stronger than his circumstances. Discomfort is not cruelty. It is training. You cannot build resilience in a padded room. You cannot discover conviction without resistance. Growth lives only where challenge presses against you. So start small. Wake up 30 minutes earlier. Say no when you mean no. Try the thing you've avoided because you're afraid of looking foolish. Each act of chosen discomfort is a step into your frontier. Each act avoided shrinks that frontier back into a cage. Here's where another enemy shows its face: excuses. Excuses sound noble. They wear polished clothes. I'm busy. I don't have time. That's just not me. But excuses are elegant disguises for fear. Fear of failure, fear of judgment, fear of change. And the danger is that you start to treat excuses as laws. You stop questioning them. You let them rule you. Epictetus said, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. That is the death of excuses. Because behind every excuse lies a desire to look safe, to look competent, to look in control. But a strong mind is not built by looking safe. It is built by facing reality without disguise. Ask yourself honestly, what in my life is still stuck because I keep making excuses? Answer that and you will see the first crack in the wall you've built around yourself. At this stage, one more habit waits: the hunger for approval. This one is deep, almost invisible. We all crave recognition. We all want to be praised, understood, admired. That craving is human. But when your compass is tied to the opinions of others, you lose your way. You hesitate on key decisions. You bend yourself to fit the crowd. Slowly, piece by piece, your own core dissolves. Marcus Aurelius once wrote with quiet astonishment, "We love ourselves more than others, yet we care more about their opinion than our own." Think about that. You claim to value yourself, yet you give away your worth to the shifting winds of other people's judgment. That is slavery. A Stoic knows that the only approval that matters comes from conscience. The day you no longer need to be applauded or understood is the day you taste real freedom. And here is the surprising truth. Letting go of these habits does not leave you hollow. It leaves you lighter, like cutting sandbags from a hot air balloon. You begin to rise. You do not need more. You need less. Less complaining, less comfort seeking, less excuse making, less chasing of validation. In the subtraction, you find addition. You meet a version of yourself you have never seen before. Calm, clear, unshakable. Pause with me now. Just one breath. Close your eyes and ask yourself, am I nurturing my mind or sabotaging it? What habit is quietly keeping me small? The answer is already there. You know the one. You don't need a revolution overnight. You don't need to tear your life apart. Start with one habit. Just one. Stop feeding it. No overthinking. No grand promises. Just stop. Every time you refuse the habit that weakens you, you strike the wall around your willpower with a hammer. Each strike may feel small, but over time, the wall crumbles. And one day, without even noticing the exact moment, you will no longer need to pretend you are strong. You will be. And when that day comes, you will be ready for the next step. Because breaking habits is only half the battle. Clearing away the weeds prepares the soil, but growth requires planting. And that is where the journey leads next, into daily practices, concrete actions, rituals of the mind and body that forge strength not for a day but for a lifetime. Chapter 3, Daily Practices, the Foundation of the Inner Fortress. Let's step into the third chapter where the ground beneath your feet has been cleared of old debris. The outdated beliefs you once clung to are gone. The self-sabotaging habits that weighed you down have been stripped away. You stand on bare ground now. And while at first it may feel frightening, like the air is too open, too empty, it is not emptiness at all. It is possibility. It is the beginning of a foundation strong enough to hold everything you hope to become. Now imagine this space as a construction site. You are not building a tent to get through the night. You are building a fortress for the mind. And each brick you place is not knowledge alone but action. Repeated, steady, real. That is where most people get it wrong. They think strength comes from ideas, from words they tape to mirrors, from the occasional burst of inspiration. But the Stoics knew better. A fortress is not built by thinking about walls. It is built brick by brick. Here's where the practice begins. Every day you lay those bricks in ways that seem small, even trivial, but that accumulate into strength. Take a cold shower in the morning. No, it doesn't make you a hero, but it makes you face the first test of the day. Do you choose discomfort to regain control, or do you allow old habits to drag you back into weakness? That single choice is louder than you realize. Because every act of chosen discomfort hardens your will. Every act of surrender to comfort softens it. And then there is movement. A weak body can barely carry a strong mind. The Romans understood this centuries ago. The body is not decoration. It is the instrument of your will. When you run, when you lift, when you push your frame against resistance, you're not just training muscle, you're training grit, you're training endurance, and most of all, you're building self-respect. Because nothing whispers louder than this, I said I would, and I did. Rain or shine, witnessed or unseen, ask yourself, how long has it been since you broke a promise to yourself? Every broken promise weakens your foundation. Every kept promise strengthens it. But intensity is only half the story. The other half is depth. A true Stoic carves out moments to step away from the noise, to shut off the world, to listen inward. Call it silence, call it stillness, call it meditation. The name doesn't matter. What matters is the act. Because no one controls their emotions without first observing them. No one steers the storm without first learning its patterns. When the world pushes you into chaos, the only thing that steadies you is this inner practice. Without it, you are a leaf in the wind. With it, you are rooted. From here comes the practice most people avoid, the deliberate choice to challenge yourself daily. Not to impress, not to show off, but to sharpen. Wake up when the alarm rings. Don't snooze. Send the uncomfortable email you've been postponing. Say no when you know you should, even if guilt presses against your chest. Learn the skill that makes you stumble and feel clumsy. Every small act of chosen challenge is a brick added to your wall. Every act you avoid is a hole carved into your foundation. Epictetus said it plainly, no man is free who is not master of himself. It is not enough to admire this line. You must live it. The freedom you chase isn't out there in accolades or validation. It's in your ability to do what must be done, even when you don't feel like it. Especially when you don't feel like it. So, let me ask you, when was the last time you chose the hard thing over the easy one? When was the last time you said no to comfort so you could say yes to growth? These questions sting because they reveal the truth. A strong mind doesn't need to announce itself. It doesn't overreact. It doesn't flex for approval. It doesn't chase validation. It simply is. And others can feel it even if they don't know why. That quiet steadiness unsettles them because it reflects back the instability in their own lives. Now imagine this. You take a cold shower tomorrow morning. You move your body through strain and sweat. You sit in silence for 10 minutes while the world rushes outside. You choose the hard thing you've been avoiding. And you do it not because motivation carried you, but because you decided. No applause, no reward, just the quiet knowing. You are becoming solid as stone. That quiet knowing is worth more than any recognition. But there will be days when you feel tired. Days when discouragement weighs on your chest like a stone. Days when you whisper, "I can't keep this up." And that is the moment you pause. That is the moment you breathe. That is the moment you realize this discomfort will not break me. It is not punishment. It is a test. It is simply asking, are you worthy of the stronger version of yourself? And if you keep walking, if you keep choosing the harder path, something subtle will change. You will notice the shift in your reactions. You will see your calm in chaos. You will feel your grip on anger loosen. Laziness will lose its hold. Fear will not bind you as it once did. And you will know you are no longer who you used to be. This is what the Stoics called training. Not in words, not in rituals, but in the deliberate act of meeting each day with courage, discipline, and clarity. It is not glamorous, but it is freedom. Because the man who chooses discomfort owns himself. The man who chooses silence over rage rules himself. The man who challenges himself daily cannot be mastered by circumstance. And when you reach that point, when your habits of strength outweigh your habits of weakness, you'll be ready for the next lesson. Because the path does not end with practice alone. It leads into the fire of failure. Not to be feared, not to be hidden, but to be befriended. And that is the next key to becoming truly unshakable. Chapter 4, The Forge of Failure, the map no one wants to read. Entering the fourth chapter, picture the word failure scrolled across a door. Most of us have been taught to avoid that door, to walk around it, to pretend it isn't there, as if failure were a trap laid on the road of life, waiting only for the careless to fall into. But the Stoic sees differently. To them, failure is not a trap. It is a map. A map no one wants to hold. Yet, every person who has ever gone far has studied with care. Look closely at what failure reveals. It points to the cracks you've ignored, the parts of yourself you didn't fully understand, the strength you thought you had but didn't. Most people treat failure as an ending. The Stoic sees it as a stern nod from reality. An invitation to adjust and move forward. Think of the moments in your own life. The job you lost, the rejection letter that stung, the night you stood in a room full of people yet felt invisible. In those moments, you failed. But if all you did was blame yourself, lash out at others, or run for comfort, you missed a rare chance to forge your mind. Here's the heart of it. A strong mind isn't the one that knows everything. It's the one willing to sit with failure and ask, what are you here to teach me? The most respected people you'll ever meet carry that question quietly within them. They've asked it again and again, and they've waited long for the answers. Pulitzer Prize-winning journalist Kathryn Schultz wrote an entire book called Being Wrong, A Truth We'd Rather Ignore. The best people are often the ones who've been wrong the most, but they don't drown in their mistakes. They observe them as calmly as scientists watching an experiment. No shame, no excuses. No defensiveness. If you fail, you learn. If you learn, you grow. That's how they move further than those who cling desperately to being right. Ask yourself now, what mistake still chains you from trying again? What failure sits in the back of your mind whispering that you can't? The ego that cannot admit fault is the quietest prison you'll ever live in. And many never escape it. But the Stoic does. They don't deny their flaws. They treat them as the first stones in the staircase to strength. Because if you can't handle being wrong, you'll never handle getting better. Take Sarah Blakely as an example. Her father asked her every day as a child, "What did you fail at today?" Most parents avoid that question, but he forced her to face it. And slowly she stopped seeing failure as shame and started seeing it as proof she was reaching. When her idea for Spanx was rejected dozens of times, she didn't feel embarrassed. She felt closer to a yes. Her story reminds us of a simple truth. You and I are not as different from her as we think. The only real difference is whether we train our minds to flinch at the word no or to grow sharper every time we hear it. This is where Stoicism gives us its fiercest metaphor. A blacksmith doesn't sharpen steel in warm water. He tempers it with fire, hammer, and anvil. And so it is with the mind. Failure is your forge. Every rejection, every stumble, every heartbreak is a hammer strike. And each time you fall, you stand before a choice. Shrink back into the shape you were, or take the heat and remake yourself. Epictetus said, difficulties show men what they are. Not success, not applause. It's failure, hardship, and loss that strip you bare. Only then, when you dare to look honestly at what's left, does rebuilding mean anything at all. The tragedy is that no one teaches us how to fail well. We are taught to win, to be clever, to rise above others. But who shows us how to watch someone we love walk away without losing our self-worth? Who shows us how to stare at a report card full of FS, without believing we are worthless? Who teaches us to fail and still stay awake through the pain, rather than numbing it away? That is the silence Stoicism fills. A Stoic isn't someone who feels no pain. They feel deeply, but they refuse to lose themselves inside it. So, if you truly want to build a mind that makes others think twice before underestimating you, start not with your strengths, but with your weakest point. Find the failure you are still too afraid to face. Write it down. Look at it. Don't judge it. Don't run from it. Learn from it. And the next time failure knocks, don't pretend you're not home. Open the door. Offer it a quiet seat at your table, even a cup of tea. Ask it calmly, what are you here to teach me this time? From here, the journey sharpens. If you've made it this far, you're not just listening to words. You're learning to stand inside the fire itself. This isn't about comfort. It's about awakening something inside you that's been waiting for heat. Failure holds that key. If this message shifts even a corner of how you see failure, leave a comment with just one word, learn. And if you want to keep forging a mind like steel, subscribe now so you don't miss the next strikes of the hammer. Because what comes next won't repeat what you've already heard. It will cut deeper, shaping the core of a mind the world cannot ignore. Chapter 5, Mastering the Flame, the Power of Restraint. Moving into the 5th chapter, step back into the memory of the last time someone wounded you. Maybe it was just a careless remark dropped into conversation. Maybe a sharp comment that cut deeper than it should have, or even a dismissive glance that told you without words, you're not worth much. In that instant, your body reacted for you. Blood rushed to your head. Your chest tightened, your throat closed with anger. You wanted to fire back, to let them feel the sting you felt. That reflex is human. But not every reflex deserves to be followed. Emotions, when left unchecked, are like steam in a sealed cooker. Open the lid too soon and it blasts outward, scalding everything in sight. But hold steady, manage the flame, and that same heat becomes the power to cook a nourishing meal. The Stoics knew this. The danger is not in the fire itself, but in whether you know how to control it. The question is not, do I feel anger? The question is this worth losing my peace over? Think about your own days. Is a nasty comment online really worth 3 days of brooding? Is a disagreement in a meeting worth pounding the table and staining your reputation? Is one look of arrogance across the room worth surrendering hours of your calm? Marcus Aurelius said it plainly. You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this and you will find strength. No flowery language, no lofty philosophy, just truth. And if you truly believed it, you'd see that the excuse to lose yourself in rage was never valid. Here's where a different image comes in. Picture a job interview. A candidate enters the room with solid experience, a strong resume, but nerves flicker across their face. The interviewer arches an eyebrow. The silence could cut. Instead of panicking, the candidate smiles and calmly says, "Could you share what concerns you might have? I'd love to address them." The air changes. No one expected that. It wasn't just an answer. It was a signal. I'm not easily shaken. That signal, more than words, commands respect. Not because the candidate was the smartest in the room, but because they remained steady when tested. I once heard a man in his 50s describe his own lesson. He said, "It took me 15 years to learn not to argue back when my wife was upset. Not because I was afraid, but because I realized that when someone is angry, they say things they don't mean, and I choose not to make it worse." That man had never read a line of Stoic philosophy, but he had lived it. He had learned the hardest truth, that restraint is not weakness. It is power. Pausing before you react is not a trick you pull out once in a while. It is a skill, one that must be trained. Every morning before you step out into the noise of the world, remind yourself, today I will not react too quickly. Carry that vow like armor. And when the moment comes, when words push against your chest and heat rises to your face, try this. Stand still for 5 seconds. Just count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, count as if you are about to say something sacred, because what comes out of your mouth in those moments has the power to either wound or steady. Seneca wrote, "A great part of the harm that is done in this world is due to impulsive speech." And he was right. If you speak in the grip of anger, you will almost certainly regret it. But if you can hold it back, you transform what could have been destruction into strength. Wisdom is not knowing everything. Wisdom is knowing when silence speaks louder than words. There's an old line, "A fool gives full vent to his spirit, but the wise man holds it back." That's not repression. That's control. It's the difference between being a slave to emotion and being a master of it. Try it for a week. Just 1 week. Don't focus on changing others. Focus on yourself. You'll notice the difference not in how people behave, but in how your presence shifts. You'll feel calmer, harder to provoke, less exposed to the rashness of others. And then you'll notice something else. People start treating you differently, not because you're famous, not because you're cold, but because they sense that their chaos cannot pierce you. Staying grounded when conflict first sparks is difficult. But staying grounded when someone is pouring fuel on the fire, that is another level. That is true power. That is what the Stoic calls mastery. Because anyone can throw words in anger, anyone can slam the table, anyone can vent. But the one who stays steady while flames lick the walls, that one becomes unshakable. So here's the reminder. Emotions are not the enemy. They are messages. Read them. Learn from them. But do not hand them the reins of your life. Control the flame, and the same heat that could burn your house down will instead forge your strength. And from here the journey moves deeper still. Because once you learn to steady yourself under fire, the next step is to build a core so unshakable that no storm, no insult, no setback can tear it apart. That is the lesson waiting just ahead. Chapter 6, The Unshakable Core, Silence in the Midst of Chaos. Advancing to the 6th chapter. This is where strength stops being an act you put on for others and becomes the foundation you quietly live from. In Stoicism, no one is born unshakable. It isn't luck. It isn't a gift. It is a skill built slowly, patiently, consistently, built in silence, so quietly that no one notices until one day it is there, immovable. And because it is quiet when it finally reveals itself, it carries a presence that cannot be ignored. Not the kind of fear that comes from aggression, but the awe that rises when someone stands steady while everyone else spins into panic. What does this actually look like? Strip away the philosophy, the books, the quotes, and here's the scene. You're in rush hour traffic that refuses to move. A deadline presses down on you like a weight. Your phone rings again and again, and just as you exhale, an email arrives from your boss blaming you for a mistake that wasn't yours. In that moment, most people snap. They curse. They slam desks. They take it out on whoever happens to be near. But if you have built your core, you don't lose yourself. You don't waste your fire. You breathe. You remind yourself, I've been through worse. I can handle this. That is Stoicism in its truest form. Not a lecture, not a performance. Just one choice in one moment that changes everything. A single pause that alters the shape of your day. Picture your mind as a house. When the storm comes, the fragile run outside, desperate to see what's happening, pulled in every direction by fear. But the Stoic does something different. They shut the door, check the windows, secure the walls from within. The storm still rages, but inside the foundation holds. The world will always be chaotic. But you only need one place that stays steady, and that place is within you. From here the practice begins. Part of the Stoic way is learning what is not worth reacting to, and that is something you can train. Start with just one moment each day. A driver cuts you off. Your phone floods with notifications. A cup of coffee tips across your desk onto the document you needed. Normally you would flare up, pour fuel on the fire, but this time you pause. You ask, is this emotion useful? Is it helping anything? If the answer is no, you let it fall away. Each pause is a brick. Each controlled response is another stone laid in the foundation of your inner fortress. Quiet repetition. No applause, no noise, just steady work. And here is the paradox. People will notice, even if they don't understand. They may disagree with you, dislike you, or even try to provoke you. But when they see that they cannot move you, something in them hesitates. Your calm becomes a mirror. And in that reflection, they see their own chaos. And not everyone is ready to face that. That is why quiet steadiness carries more power than loud reaction. Let me tell you a story. Not to entertain, but to show that this path is possible, even in ordinary lives. A man named Mark lived in the suburbs of Cincinnati. He was a delivery driver, 12-hour days, sending money home to a mother fighting cancer while carrying the weight of student loans from a degree he never finished. One winter night, his truck skidded on ice. The crash ended his job. A week later, his girlfriend left. She left him for a safer choice, a man who had not crashed his life. Mark was stripped bare. He had every reason to break, to lash out, to collapse into self-pity, or to rage against the injustice of a truck accident followed by betrayal. But Mark had been reading. He hadn't been reading self-help, he had been reading Epictetus. He recalled the philosopher's stark command, don't demand that things happen as you wish, but wish that they happen as they do happen, and you will go on well. He paused. He saw his misfortunes not as punishment, but as raw materials. He asked not, why me, but, what must I do now? He stopped complaining, a habit he had never realized he had. He took the cold shock of the breakup and the job loss, not as a sign of weakness, but as a chance to forge something new. The pain was real, but he refused to lose himself in the pain. He sold his possessions, moved in with a friend, and used the insurance money for a community college course in logistics, a field he could study while caring for his mother. No grand announcement. No dramatic social media post about his new chapter. Just a quiet, internal recentering. A year later, the same people who pitied him were confused. He didn't seem bitter. He was calmer, more focused. He spoke less but with greater clarity. He had not won a lottery or gotten a grand promotion. He had simply won the battle of his mind. He was moving forward, not because life suddenly became easy, but because he had become unmovable. He had turned two devastating external events into the necessary friction for his own internal sharpening. The storm had come, but his house had held. And the reason was his core. The story of Mark is the story of the inner fortress. It is not built with money or status. It is built with the bricks of daily choice, the refusal to complain, the rejection of comfort, the courage to face what is. The core is the place where you realize that everything external is borrowed. Only your character, your choices, and your ability to remain calm in the face of destiny are truly yours. The ultimate test of this core, however, is not just surviving a storm. It is greeting the next storm with a profound sense of acceptance. It is a deeper philosophy, one that brings the quiet strength to its absolute pinnacle. It is the final freedom. And that is where the journey leads next. Chapter 7, The Final Freedom, Embracing Your Destiny, Amor Fati. We now enter the 7th chapter, the philosophical heart of unshakable strength. Up to this point, we have focused on control, controlling our thoughts, our habits, and our reactions. But the Stoic path does not end with control. It ends with acceptance. This is where we confront the most challenging, yet most liberating, of all Stoic concepts, amor fati, the love of fate. To love your fate does not mean you are passive. It does not mean you roll over and let life happen to you. It means you embrace everything that happens, the good, the bad, the beautiful, and the ugly, as necessary fuel for your life. It is the ultimate antidote to the "why me" mentality that crippled us in Chapter 1. Think of an archer. The archer can control the bow, the tension of the string, the aim of the arrow, and the release. This is the dichotomy of control in action. But once the arrow leaves the bow, the archer loses control. The wind, a sudden gust, a flying bird, any of these external forces can change the trajectory. The non-Stoic archer rages at the wind. The Stoic archer accepts the result, learns from the failure, and prepares to fire the next arrow with perfect composure. But the archer who practices amor fati does something even more profound. They see the gust of wind not as an impediment, but as a part of the shot itself. They see the result as the only way the shot was ever meant to land. This is the key distinction. Most of us are only willing to accept the fate we like. Amor fati demands that you accept the fate that is. It means you look at the greatest setback, the deepest betrayal, the hardest loss, and you say, "This is mine. This belongs to my life. And I will use it to be better." Seneca, in his Letters from a Stoic, often used a practice called premeditatio malorum or negative visualization. It's the deliberate contemplation of the worst-case scenario. Why do this? To make the worst familiar. To remove its power to shock and paralyze you. If you imagine losing your job, your home, your health, and you prepare your mind for the emotional impact, when it actually happens, it arrives not as a shockwave, but as a dull echo of a pain you've already managed. The world sees the man who practices negative visualization as pessimistic. The Stoic sees him as prepared. The non-Stoic spends their life fearing the future. The Stoic has already faced the future, internalized the loss, and is free to enjoy the present. Imagine the peace this brings. If you have embraced the possibility of loss, you are free from the anxiety of clinging. You treat your possessions, your relationships, even your body, with gratitude and care, but you are not dependent on them for your sense of self. Your peace is portable. If the external conditions change, your internal state remains unmoved. As Epictetus taught, we should view everything we cherish, our partner, our children, our friends, as being on loan from the universe. When the lender calls them back, we hand them over without protest, knowing they were never truly ours to begin with. The grief is human, but the protest is optional. The Stoic chooses not to protest. This is the final freedom. The non-Stoic seeks freedom by trying to control everything outside himself. The Stoic finds freedom by realizing that the only thing he truly owns is his assent, his judgment of events. You cannot control the traffic, but you can control your judgment of it. You cannot control the boss's mood, but you can control your acceptance of it. You cannot control the inevitability of death, but you can control how you live your life right now. When you practice amor fati, you stop fighting reality. You stop wasting your energy on the way things should be, and you start applying that energy to the way things are. This deep, non-resistant alignment with the universe is what makes a person truly unshakable. How can someone defeat you when you have already accepted every outcome as an opportunity? How can an enemy surprise you when you have already prepared for their arrival? The true victory, the ultimate state of Stoic mastery, is to live in a way that allows you to look back at the end of your days, at the mistakes, the triumphs, the losses, the gains, and say with absolute conviction, would not have had it any other way. I love my fate. This acceptance, however, must be channeled. It must serve a higher purpose. A strong mind is only half a life. A strong mind guided by a moral compass is a complete one. The unshakable strength we've forged must be put into service, into the only good that truly matters, virtue. And that is the final pillar of the truly untouchable life. Chapter 8, The Untouchable Life, Virtue as the Only Good. We arrive now at the 8th and final philosophical chapter. If the preceding 7 steps were the how to build the fortress, how to master the flame, how to love the fate, this chapter is the why. Why pursue this quiet strength? Why stand steady in the storm? Why not just use this mental toughness for selfish gain? The answer, for the Stoics, is unambiguous: virtue is the sole good. All the practices, the non-reaction, the resilience, the self-mastery, are merely tools. They are the hammer and the anvil. But what are you building? The purpose of the strong mind is not success, not fame, not wealth, and not even comfort. The purpose is to be a good human being. Virtue, in the Stoic sense, is not just about being nice. It is the highest human excellence. It is the perfection of our rational and social nature. It is divided into 4 cardinal forms, which serve as the only true, non-negotiable compass for the unshakable life. Wisdom, prudence, the ability to make good judgments, to distinguish what is good from what is bad, and to see clearly what is within your control, the dichotomy of control. Justice, morality/fairness, treating all human beings with fairness and dignity, recognizing that we are all parts of the same whole, cosmic citizenship. Courage, fortitude, not just physical bravery, but the moral courage to act rightly despite fear, pain, or social pressure. It is the courage to keep walking the hard path you chose in Chapter 3. Temperance, self-control/discipline, the ability to manage your desires and impulses, to live with moderation, and to choose the right action over the comfortable one, the opposite of the habits dismantled in Chapter 2. An unshakable man who lacks virtue is merely a talented brute. His composure is cold, his resilience is applied only to self-gain, and his acceptance is a cynical shrug. He may be physically or financially strong, but he is internally fragile, because his peace depends on the absence of challenge to his ego or his possessions. But the virtuous Stoic is truly untouchable. When he faces temptation, his temperance holds the line. When he faces a dilemma, his wisdom cuts through the fog. When he faces danger or pain, his courage allows him to stand firm. When he deals with his neighbor or his enemy, his justice ensures his actions are ethical. Imagine the quiet power of a mind governed by justice. When an injustice is done to you, your first impulse is not rage or petty revenge, but a commitment to ensure your own response maintains the integrity of your character. Your strength is used not to dominate the other person, but to restore balance or to bear the wrong without being corrupted by it. Marcus Aurelius constantly reminded himself that his duty was to humanity, writing, "What is bad for the hive is bad for the bee." If you act unjustly, you harm your community, and in doing so, you harm yourself, the social, rational part of you. This moral integrity is the ultimate insulation against the world. No external event can touch your virtue. You can lose your fortune, your reputation, your health, and your loved ones, but your ability to choose a virtuous response remains. That is why it is the only true good. Everything else is an indifferent, a resource to be used, but not the source of your happiness. The person who has internal peace because they know they have acted with honesty, clarity, and discipline, has a peace that is non-negotiable. The person whose peace depends on their stock portfolio or their social approval is one bad news cycle away from collapse. This entire journey, from the initial mindset shift to the practice of amor fati, is the training ground for the virtuous life. You break bad habits, temperance, you choose hard actions, courage, you accept fate, wisdom, all so that you can fulfill your purpose as a rational, social being, justice. So, the quiet strength we sought is not a performance. It is the simple, profound commitment to living excellently with the only thing you truly own, your character. This is the ultimate victory, a mind so perfectly aligned with its purpose that it needs nothing from the outside world. The man who truly masters the 8 lessons of the quiet path, mindset, habits, practice, failure, control, core, acceptance, and virtue, moves through the world with a presence that is felt, not heard. He is a tower of strength in a world of fluttering flags. He is not fighting the world. He is simply living his best life, and that quiet, immovable integrity is what truly makes him untouchable. Conclusion: the quiet revolution. Pause for emphasis. We have completed the long journey into the quiet path of power. You have walked from the chaos of reaction to the solidity of the unshakable core. We began by observing the fragile nature of a mind that ties its peace to external chaos. We learned that suffering is not the event, but the story we tell ourselves about the event. We then took the crucial step of dismantling the weaknesses that keep us small, the sugary poison of complaining, the seductive trap of comfort, the fear-filled shield of excuses, and the soul slavery of the hunger for approval. We learned that strength is found not in addition, but in subtraction. From there, we committed to the daily, deliberate practice, the cold showers, the chosen discomfort, the quiet moments of stillness, that lay the solid bricks of the inner fortress. We found the courage to embrace failure, seeing it not as an ending, but as the fiery forge necessary to temper our steel. We mastered the flame, learning the crucial 5-second pause that separates a wise response from a regretted outburst, understanding that restraint is not weakness, but the truest form of power. This control led us to forge the unshakable core, a quiet confidence built from the truth of our actions, not the noise of our declarations. Finally, we reached the pinnacle, the profound, liberating acceptance of amor fati, the love of our destiny, which frees us from anxiety and allows us to use every event as fuel for growth. And we bound it all together with the ultimate purpose, the unwavering commitment to virtue, the only true good that no storm can take away. This is the Stoic blueprint for a life lived with quiet, formidable strength. It is not about becoming a louder person, it is about becoming a deeper one. It is about building a mind that is no longer negotiable. When you refuse to complain, you reclaim your power. When you choose discomfort, you expand your frontier. When you pause before reaction, you choose wisdom over regret. When you embrace your fate, you achieve final freedom. This strength is not borrowed. It is not granted. It is forged. It is built in the mornings you chose the hard path, in the nights you sat with failure, and in the moments you chose stillness over rage. I want you to take one lesson from this entire journey and apply it today. Not tomorrow. Not when you feel motivated. Today. Choose one moment to pause before reacting. Choose one small act of discomfort over comfort. Choose one failure to look at and say, "What are you here to teach me?" This is not a theoretical exercise. This is the quiet revolution of one life, your life, against the chaos of the world. And when you win that internal battle, your presence will be felt. Not because you shout your victory, but because your steadiness speaks for itself. If this message has given you a moment of clarity or a single brick for your inner fortress, show your support. Hit the like button to signal your commitment to this path. Share this video with one person you know who is fighting a silent battle. And if you are ready to continue forging a mind of steel, subscribe to Audio now. The journey to the unshakable life is long, but you no longer have to walk it alone. This is the commitment. This is the quiet revolution. Now, go and build your fortress.